Attention humanitarian and development professionals. Are you looking to take your career to the next level? Then you've come to the right place. Humanitarian Global offers self-paced online courses designed specifically for you. With our comprehensive curriculum, you'll build your capacity in the most critical areas of humanitarian and development work. Our course offerings include monitoring, evaluation, accountability and learning, water, sanitation and hygiene, disaster risk reduction and management, food security and nutrition in emergencies, procurement and supply chain management, human nutrition and dietetics, maternal, infant and young child nutrition. With Humanitarian Global, you'll have the opportunity to grow your skills and impact the lives of people in need. Visit our website to learn more about our courses and apply today.
Hello everyone once again, and welcome to today's webinar. Today's webinar is on water, sanitation and hygiene, that is WASH. And today's topic is leveraging on WASH for menstrual hygiene management. So today's topic will be focusing a lot on menstrual hygiene management. And our expert for the day is Vincent Ouma, who's a WASH expert. And I will be bringing him just in a little bit as we begin our salutations. So to start off, I'd like to welcome the team here from Humanitarian Global, just to say hello, starting with myself. Hello to everyone. I believe this is a familiar voice. You're used to hearing it, moderating these sessions. So my name is Diana. I'm the Academics and Training Coordinator here at Humanitarian Global. And for today, I will be your moderator for the webinar. With me, I do have Ian. Ian, you can say hello to the team and welcome them to the webinar.
Thank you, Diana. Hello and good morning, good afternoon, everyone, from wherever you're joining us from. My name is Ian. I represent the team as the Business Development Manager. I do look forward to a resourceful session this morning. Remember to engage us on the Q&A on the chat section, and we will be here at least to ensure that we do have a very enjoyable session. Thank you. Over to you, Diana.
Thank you so much, Ian. And with us, we have our expert for the day, Vincent. Vincent, you can come on and say hello to everyone before we proceed.
Thank you, Diana. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we are able to hear you.
Yeah, thank you. Just checking the mic. So my name is Vincent Ouma. I have WASH expert. Be happy to be with you for the next 1 hour or so. I'm happy to see so many participants here. I hope we'll enjoy our time together. Thank you. Back to you, Dan.
Thank you so much, Vincent. And there are those of us from Humanitarian Global who work behind the scenes. So on behalf of Anthony and Brian, I do send their salutations to us. Before I begin, as always, I'd like to list a few house rules that we should abide by throughout this webinar. House rule number 1, do engage us in the chat section. We are very responsive when it comes to the chats that you share with us, be it maybe you're facing a technical difficulty or you need some assistance somehow, do share with us in the chat section. We'll be able to respond quickly. Also, like I did mention at the beginning, if you're interested in taking up any of the WASH courses, I'll be showing you shortly that we do offer here at Humanitarian Global. Feel free to share your contact details with us in the chat section. Remember, we do have data privacy. No one else other than myself and Ian are able to see the messages that you do share with us. So you can share with us your phone number and your email address, and our team will be able to reach out to you with more information on the course, on the WASH courses, or on the course that you're interested in. House rule number 2 is make good use of the Q&A section. So throughout Vincent's presentation, remember today's topic is leveraging on WASH for menstrual hygiene management. Throughout his presentation, you might have some questions or may need him to elaborate on something. Kindly direct those questions to the Q&A section. And at the end of his presentation, we will be able to take you through a session on Q&A. Speaking of a session on Q&A, at some point during the Q&A, I will ask participants to come on the webinar and ask questions live. And at this point, I will ask participants to raise their hands for us to allow them to speak, for them to be able to ask their questions. Kindly refrain from raising your hand until this time. If you're having a technical issue or you cannot hear us clearly, just send us a chat message and we'll be able to respond quickly. If you raise your hand, we might not be able to assist you immediately. With that said, I believe we can begin today's webinar. Remember, it's on water, sanitation, and hygiene, that is WASH. And here at Humanitarian Global, we do have a number of courses on WASH. I believe you can see my screen. So we do have a number of courses on water, sanitation, and hygiene. And this includes the certificate level, diploma level, and postgraduate diploma level. So those are the three courses that are offered specifically on WASH. WASH is under SDG 6. This is clean water and sanitation for all. And these courses under WASH are actually for anyone who works in humanitarian development aid field, or anyone who's wishing to transition into such a field, or anyone who's wishing to raise awareness on water, sanitation, and hygiene. Like I did mention, we have three main programs directly under WASH, which is online certificate program, the diploma program, and the online postgraduate program. In addition to that, we have two other short courses. This one is menstrual hygiene management, which is what we are covering today. And we do offer this course as an online class, a virtual classroom for our participant. It takes 3 weeks, one lesson a day. I mean, one day a week. And through these 3 weeks, you'll be able to understand all there is to understand about menstrual hygiene management, including the myths, the misconceptions, the taboos that are there, and how to break these myths and misconceptions. You'll be able to understand how to safely manage menstrual products as well, and in addition to other topics and skills that you'll be able to acquire. Something else under WASH is the social and behavior change communication. This is SBCC, and this also falls under communication, whereby you're able to understand what SBCC basically is all about. That is social and behavior change communication, and how to use it, how to prepare actually SBCC campaigns, how you're able to implement it, how it changes behaviors. Because remember, when we're talking about SBCC, as much as it's under communication, it also falls under different programs, including WASH. And here we're trying to change the knowledge, attitudes, norms, beliefs, and behaviors of people. So that is what we're trying to influence through SBCC. Like I did mention, SBCC falls under communication, and it's actually quite an important skill to have within your day-to-day work, be it in an NGO, be it in a CBO, be it in even a government institution. So those are the two short courses that we do have. Remember, social and behavior communication change, as well as menstrual hygiene management, which we will be talking more about today. In case if you're interested in any of the courses I've talked about, kindly do share with us your contact details. We'll be able to share with you a registration form, as well as more information on these courses. We'll also be sharing a link to this webpage that contains all the WASH courses, and I welcome you to explore more on this webpage. With that said, I would like now to bring Vincent on board. Remember, he will be talking about leveraging on WASH for menstrual hygiene management. Vincent, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dana. May I know how long we have?
Sorry, Vincent, we're not able to hear you properly.
How long do we have? How much time do we have? Thank you very much. So, just to note that I'm on full screen, so I'm not able to see any comments or chats. You will do that for me. And, once again, for the learners who are here, I can see 40 participants. Is to thank you for showing interest in this particular subject that is frowned upon by many. But then is an important subject that we need to talk about. As I said earlier, I'm a health expert, public health specialist and also a WASH specialist. This is what I've done for many years. Currently, I focus a lot of my work on public health, dealing with diseases, what we call the neglected tropical diseases, which have a bearing on water, sanitation, and hygiene, and also MHM issues. I'm also an MHM champion in Kenya, and been able to do a lot of work around this specific topic. But also, I like training and I enjoy teaching students because I assume that with all the knowledge that I've gathered over the years, it only makes sense to share this with those that are willing and those that hope to impact their society. So today we talk about leveraging on WASH for MHM, and for us to be able to see that picture quite clearly is first to try and understand what is MHM, menstrual hygiene management, or menstrual health management. When this is mentioned, sometimes men want to leave the room because they imagine that the women affair as far as gender is concerned, but we do learn that menstrual blood is the only source of blood that is not traumatically induced. Yet in modern society, this is the most hidden blood, the one so rarely spoken of, and most or almost never seen, except privately by women. Note that this happens to half or slightly over half the population, yet is something that has been kept so much secretive. So that is something to just ponder about as we go on, just to think through and see what does it mean. So where do we find this MHM, menstrual health management? For those who are within the development sector, the health sector, water, sanitation, hygiene, gender issues, you find that there are around 7 SDGs where you find MHM issues talked about. One of it is issue of poverty, SDG number 1. SDG 3, where is family anchored under good health and well-being, quality education, gender equality, clean water and sanitation, decent work and economic growth, and reduced inequalities. So within those SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, you will find issues of MHM discussed. You'll find issues of water, where our anchor is for today, that is SDG number 6, clean water and sanitation. Our approach, our entry point to MHM today, very heavily discussed within those precincts. And therefore it's important to remember that. Something else I'd like you to know is that this being a webinar, I've tried to just do an overview of what MHM is all about and how do we look at as a WASH component. And therefore, a lot of details have been left out so that we fit within the 1 hour. Otherwise, this is a course that's supposed to take 3 weeks because there's so much to learn. But that said, it's important to understand that MHM is a holistic kind of topic and needs to be reflected both in policy, practice, and research. It does mean that there are a number of issues that you need to look at, such as information awareness, the use of the products, availability of wash services, and of course, at the end of it, self-disposal, and just being able to manage our environment. So that's very important for all the professionals to know and to understand. But just to break it down further, when we look into issues of MHM and the approach, know that there are 3 areas or 3 main areas or categories, to say, that we normally break into. And the main one is usually breaking the silence. Like I said, this is an issue that is very problematic to many people, and it is hidden in silence. Rather, those who menstruate, they don't talk about it. And although there are many issues that happen around it, we rarely hear about it. We rarely speak about it. And sometimes the men don't even understand what happened. So that's a key component to remember. The second one is managing menstruation hygienically. This borders a lot on health and hygiene around that particular aspect. You go around your menstruation and whatever happens within that space, that's a key component. There are many things under that. And of course, the final one in the holistic approach is about the self reuse and disposal solutions. Within all this, of course, we'll talk about the environment. You will talk about policies. You will talk about practices. You will talk about programs, and you will talk about many issues. But they can be broken down into these three main broad categories as far as MHM is concerned. So module one, like we said, we normally break this into three modules, and I'll just give an overview of each. Module one is breaking the silence around menstruation. And just to note that a normal woman will menstruate for a total of 40 years, plus or minus 5, depending thereabouts in her lifetime. But also the truth is that many majority of women in developing world do not have access to clean water, safe and private spaces for washing, cleaning, and materials for absorbing the menstrual blood. Sometimes there are no facilities for use or even for proper disposal of these materials. And that is something that you will not hear in many boardrooms. And as such, we're talking about breaking the silence around it. 40 years is a long period. It's like half of your life. You know, if you're to live 80 years, 40 of those you will be menstruating. So that means a lot of blood that is lost, but also many days that are spent when you are going through this process. So it's something that should be taken seriously, because it's not a one-time thing that happens. You know, when we talk about disease, sometimes we normally talk about diseases of public health importance. We talk of percentages, that anytime a disease is below 2%, so in terms of prevalence, then it ceases to be a disease of public health importance. It goes beyond that, then we have to come in and do something about it. So this is something that happens to over half of the population. If you talk of prevalence, then it's about 50% of the total population. That's quite high to be ignored, and it cannot be ignored. So when we talk about MHM, normally our approach is the gender root cause. That's where many problems do appear, where it is relegated to one of the gender. And it is said that it's a women thing. But then when we talk about gender, what are we talking about? Is it expectations? Is it roles? Is it relationships? Is it power? Is it about decision making? Is it societal categorization? Is it the rights of women? I know many in the development world, when we talk about gender, you think about women, the female gender, but that is not ideally very true, because gender means many things. If we had time, we would go through this, but that time we don't have so much of it today. But then just to put things into perspective about gender, is that it is societal and cultural. It involves both men and women at different economic status. It's something that is constructed by society, they ascribe to it. It talks about productive roles for men and reproductive roles for women. It talks about public versus private sphere, which is different from sex. And sex is natural, it's biological differences. It is morphological differences between men and women. It is physiological differences, different reproductive roles for men and women. They cannot be the same. And it's only women who can be mothers, not men. I think it's quite important for us to be able to differentiate that, because again, we can loosely say that it's only women who can menstruate and not men. If men are doing that, then there's a problem somewhere in the society. Now, I know this usually brings a lot of debate when we talk about the other issues, the in-betweens and all that, but that will not be the topic for today. So we just focus on the gender and the differences, because it happens to have of our society as we talk. And if we are to talk about the gender being both men and women, then it happens to have of the gender. Normally, under this, we would want to get different experiences from people, you know, when it happened, your first menstrual experience. And this is not just for only girls or women, but everybody. And when we've done these studies and these trainings, when we've been in various groups, there are a number of things that we normally hear people talking about what was their first experience and all that. And some of it is usually quite interesting to hear what people have to say, both men, boys, and girls. The experience, they were in class, they were 9 years old, somebody had soiled themselves, you know, others were laughing, they didn't know what was happening. You know, many stories we get to hear. And when we ask, what do you normally call it? We get so many names. We get so many names. These are just some of the names that normally come, you know, visitors, and Flo, Red Robot, you know, MP. I'm sure you have a name in your own language, as I see there are many nationalities here that normally is referred to, but there are so many names that come around. Then you ask yourself, why does it have to be this creative? Why does it have to have so many names that people used to refer to it? Why can't we just refer to menstruation as a normal thing, as something that is biological? And that is where we come in on what we call breaking the silence. We want it to be open. We want people to understand what it is and to know what are their roles as far as the HM is concerned. There are various myths and conceptions, misconceptions, and taboos around MHM. And I am sure if I ask this class, what is it that are the myths that exist within your society, or where you come from as far as this is concerned? If we had time, sure, you would give me a lot of those. And as such, when you're doing this particular class, this is usually one of those very interesting subtopics that we go through, because it has to be done in class and you share, you get to laugh about it. But then, most importantly, is that you get to learn a lot about, you know, society and other people and what happens within that space. So for this, there are many that there are many myths that people believe in. Some of them, you know, just like women should not eat certain foods on their menstruation. There are certain things they should do or should not do. Some of them border, you know, religion. Some of them is culture. Some of them, age, and all these many things that we normally hear. Usually very, very interesting, but I'll not go so much into those because of the timing. But then there are the so-called facts, because after you have the myths and misconceptions, you have to dispel those facts. You have to dispel those myths, and in its place, have what we call the correct or the right facts of something, so that you establish the reality and the truth around certain issues. So one of the facts that we normally want to stress that menstruation is a natural bodily function for the reproductive health of women and adolescent girls, which results in bleeding of the womb, uterus, being lost through the vagina. So menstruation usually occurs monthly, between 2 to 7 days, and that is normal. Anything outside that is abnormal and should be looked into. So the average amount of blood loss during menstruation is about 30 to 40 ml. Women and girls generally experience some lighter flow and some heavier flow days during the menstrual period. It's normal to feel that. So that is the normal. So when we talk about abnormality, then it is outside the purview of what we just shared here. And therefore, any abnormality or anything that's outside this, somebody is menstruating for 10 days plus, then it means there's a problem there and you need to seek for medical care or healthcare and support so that that is sorted. There are many, of course, issues or maybe conditions that are related to MHM. I skipped that on this presentation. Like the PMS, we have such like things that usually women deal with, those demonstrators normally deal with. And of course, in this particular training, we normally talk about what has to be done. So once we understand what is menstruation, we go into hygiene. At this point is where you start introducing wash issues. So what is menstrual hygiene? Women and adolescent girls are using clean menstrual management material to absorb or collect menstrual blood that can be changed in privacy as often as necessary for the duration of a menstrual period. There's need for using soap and water for washing the body as required, and having access to safe and convenient facilities to dispose of used menstrual management materials. It's important that they understand the basic facts linked to menstrual cycle and how to manage it with dignity and without discomfort or fear. This is quite pivotal for those who are in program that you need to understand. I talked about the various myths that do exist. It's good to understand that they're myths, but you need to have facts. You need to have basic knowledge to know how to deal with it. So what is it that happens as men, both boys and girls, when they grow up? There are, of course, like we mentioned, we talked about gender when we started. There are the basic differences between male and female bodies. There are changes that occur in boys and girls as they grow. So menstruation is part of growing up, and that should be very clear to anybody. Menstruation is normal for every woman, including the differently abled women, if we have them in the group, the team, or in a particular area. Menstruation is not a women's issue, but a universal issue. So men need to know about it too. But also important to appreciate that there are many myths and misconceptions around menstruation, and therefore having the requisite knowledge will help you to be able to deal with that, to dispel those misconceptions, and to work with the truth and to work with the facts. Within the cycle, there's a lot that we can learn as far as the menstrual cycle is concerned. But then there's this card that we normally use. It's a wheel that we normally use. It has the various steps, the luteal phase, the ovulation phase, and all that. But there are some common symptoms that occur before or at onset of menstruation. So general weakness of the body, you're just feeling heavy. Sometimes you may experience dizziness, nausea, cramps, low abdominal pain, headache, enlarged and painful breast or fever. Sometimes backache, irritability, depression, tiredness, pimples, etc. It's important for both men and women to understand these things so that when someone is going through these particular symptoms, you're able to support them from whatever angle, from whatever point you look at it, so that you don't judge them, you don't overburden them, you don't dismiss them just because, they're having their moods, or that's how we call it. Maybe they're irritable or they're feeling tired all the time. It's important for us to have this information. So just a light touch is that on average, the cycle takes 28 days, although it may vary from 20 to 40, and that will still be considered normal. But if it goes beyond that, then there is a problem. It's likely to last for around 5 to 7 days. Initially, we said 2 to 7 days. That is all within what is needed. But also it's important to understand the various stages, and this we will go into details when we do the actual training. So we have the menstrual phase, where the uterus lining breaks down and menstruation occurs. We have the pre-ovulatory phase, the uterus lining begins to thicken. The ovulation phase, where ovulation takes place usually around day 14, and the premenstrual, or what we call the luteal phase. The uterus lining continues to thicken. If the egg is not fertilized, reproductive hormones diminish and the lining prepares to break down. So that completes the cycle. But we will look at the details when we do the full class. So under module 2, we talk of safe and hygienic management of menstruation. This is very important because now it involves the various actions that we need to take, the policies that we need to put in place, the practices, making available the materials that are needed, and all these things that will make the menstruators to feel safe. Of course, there are implications of poor menstrual waste management, and some of them you can see when poorly managed menstrual waste ends up in water, or maybe ends up in the environment. Then what happens is that there's a risk to humans and animals through environmental exposures, such as it can be eaten by animals. Sometimes it can become unsightly. The waste, when it rots, then there are all those many other conditions that are likely to come by. When it goes into the sewer system, of course, there's the issue of blockage and all that could happen, and many other issues into the oceans and rivers and the drainage. All this pollution happens. So that means that the management becomes very, very important. And safe and hygienic management requires that there's access to accurate and programmatic information. People need to understand, like we said, what it's all about. There's access to menstrual hygiene materials, the pads and all that. You'll see them in my later slides. There's access to facilities that provide privacy. There's access to water and soap within a place that provides an adequate level of privacy. And there's access to disposal facilities for use by those who are menstruating. So very key. And this is what comprises of safe and hygienic management, apart from the products themselves. These 4 principles, I think, are very important for programmers to remember and to have in mind even as you go about your programs, as you go about developing your policies and such like. So what are these products that are used for hygienic management? These are just samples. We have the reusable products, the pads, the panties. You have the cup, the menstrual, what you call the menstrual cup. A small percentage of women normally use this, maybe around 10% from studies. Then on the other end, you have the single-use disposable products, the pads, the tampons, and such like stuff that are normally used or materials. And this is what is needed. And like we said in the beginning, that there are many women that do not have access to these materials. Then they end up using things that, are just difficult to deal with. The banana leaves, they use rags, they use clothes and all this, which expose them to so many diseases that could come around. So usually we look at those, and in this continuum, there's the issue of cost. So when you go to the left, they become expensive. The commercial sanitary pads, tampons, the menstrual cups, the washable tampons. So some of them are single-use, disposable, some of them are reusable. So on the left side, the expense comes in. Then when you go on the right side, some other things that people use, newspaper leaves, toilet paper, clothes, rags, banana leaves, and all that. They're cheap, but then there are so many other health conditions that are related to this. One of them is called the toxic shock syndrome that comes around when some of these are used. And it can be very dangerous for the menstruators. And therefore, it's important for programs, those involved in programs, to be aware of what is required. So what is required as far as WASH is concerned for hygienic management of menstruation? It's important to remember that not all girls and women are the same. They're differentiated by culture, language, religion. There's the household context. There are those that live in institutions, age and maturity. There are those that are differently able. And there are those that are vulnerable or living in marginalized circumstances. Therefore, WASH becomes very important. The UN resolution number 64/292, enacted on 28th of July 2010. It recognizes the human right to water and sanitation and acknowledges that clean drinking water and sanitation are essential to the realization of all human rights. So this becomes very important and an anchor that whenever you talk about MHM, then there's the issue of water and sanitation that comes in that ideally you may not be able to do without. And therefore, it's very important to remember this particular UN resolution that binds us all. Actually, within the Kenyan context, this has become part of the law, it's part of our constitution, and therefore, the right to water and sanitation. Every citizen has a right to clean and safe environment and adequate quantities of water. Maybe the other countries, I don't know if this is already in the law. It is something that practitioners need to already think about. So it's important, and this now WASH comes in quite strongly. We zero down access to wash services, and we talk about SDG 6, clean water and sanitation. And therefore, that becomes very, very important as far as managing MHM is concerned. So what are these facilities that we need for managing menstruation? And what are some of the key aspects that we look at? If you look at that picture keenly, it will tell you so many things. There's a woman, she's carrying a baby on her back. the road on which she's using is quite muddy. She's going to a washroom there, and she has to jump all these places while carrying a baby to go and use a particular facility. You can imagine that kind of stress that she has to go through, those kind of conditions that many women around the world have to go through to achieve something that is otherwise normal and biological. So our facilities have to be safe and private. They need to meet menstrual hygiene requirements. They need to be accessible to all users. This one, obviously, access is a problem here. They need to be affordable and available when needed. They need to be well maintained and managed. And they need to meet the requirements of caregivers and parents where needed. So if these things are lacking, then it means that there's a problem with your facility and something has to be done. There is so much within each of these aspects to be learned when you talk about safe and private. There is so much that we need to learn inside there. But like I said, because of the time, just giving you snippets, we cannot go into those details. And we need to come for the MHM training. What are these safe and hygienic practices during menstruation? I think those are very clear, like washing hands using soap and water, taking rest, adequate fluids, and all that. We have a full subtopic on that. But then we can quickly transition to module 3, which is safe management of used menstrual products. Therefore, we talk about MHM and environment. Big question is, do sanitary towels and other menstrual hygiene materials impact the environment? This is a big question that we normally ask ourselves within this space. And what is it that we can do as practitioners? We realize that there's so much that happens, there's so much that goes into the environment, and there's so much that needs to be done. And therefore, we have the so-called, the big dilemma. Once you've used that pad, how do you dispose of it? Where does it go next? What happens to it next? Or once you throw it away, you never think about it. You never get to see what happens to it. So under this, we learn that menstruators are burdened with keeping a secret that everyone knows. They go to great lengths to create an illusion that menstruation does not happen. Societal expectation that menstruators should contain, conceal, and eradicate traces of menstrual blood profoundly affects their behavior related to the disposal of menstrual products and waste. So this is a behavioral thing that happens. And therefore, when this happens, it means that those who menstruate, they have challenges because of their disposal. And that is something that we need to dispel. A study done in Kenya found that around 40% the menstrual waste ends up in pit latrines. 58% of it ends up in open pits in the environment, and only around 1% is taken through the sanitary disposal services. If you look at this in number of kilos produced every year, you find that women in Kenya between the ages 19 to 49 years, they generate around 32 million kilograms of menstrual waste every year. And that is a big number. That is a big number. It means that something should be done. It means there are business opportunities for the business people in here. It means that the environment could also be heavily impacted if we don't take care. These are some of the images we see when we go out to the field. We find such as disposal. But this should not be the case. What we want as far as disposal is concerned, we need there to be policy and regulation. As far as the menstrual products are concerned, the management approaches and solutions need to be embedded within policy. And of course, there has to be firm integration into solid waste management as far as MHM disposal is concerned. There are, of course, some solutions we talk about in highly populated areas, use things like sanitary bins, incinerators, rental collection, but then you need to have budgets for that, and you need the population to service. In low populated areas, sanitary bins, people use pit latrines. Waste collection services might be limited. Then there's also the use of bioenzymes and biosanitizers that is usually allowed. One of the safest solutions that are out there in the market is incineration. I have a colleague of mine who does this particular work. This is called a Demonfort incinerator. It does wonders when you put this in schools and in highly populated areas. Is one of those measures that you can put in place. I think I want to stop here because of time. I don't know if I'm still within time or not, but then we can invite discussions from here. This is just an overview. Whatever I've given you is just a scrap on the surface. There is so much that we need to go into details about MHM and WASH, and I think we can do that at a later date. Back to you, Diana.
Thank you so much, Vincent, for that. And as we start to take questions, allow me again to remind you of the courses that we offer, the short courses. And this one is on menstrual hygiene management, MHM. And as you can see, Vincent has been able to give us a very good overview of MHM in terms of breaking the silence on menstruation, safe and hygienic management of menstruation, as well as safe management of menstrual products. So with this, like I did mention, this is the course that we do offer here at Humanitarian Global, menstrual hygiene management. It goes on for 3 weeks, and that is one class a week. That is 1 day a week. And these classes are offered for around 3 hours. And they are usually offered in the evening because we know that a lot of us have our day-to-day activities. We are probably working, and we have these courses in the evenings to allow us also time to be able to settle in after a long day and be able to attend the class. And the class is also a virtual classroom via Zoom. And this means that no one is left behind. We are all at par with the trainer and as well as with other participants. These short courses go for $250, and that is inclusive of everything. It's a one-time payment. And at the end of this course, you get what is known as a digital badge or digital certificate. And this is hosted by HPAS, which is an international accreditation body that does facilitate certification of humanitarian courses. And the same thing when you take the Social and Behavior Change Communication SBCC course, which actually begins this week. So for those of us who are interested in the SBCC course, please note it begins this week. Reach out to us, share with us your contact details. We'll be able to assist you in registration. The course similarly goes for $250, and the SBCC course does take 4 weeks, and that's 2 lessons, 2 classes in a week, again in the evenings. This is on Tuesdays and Thursdays in the evenings, and this allows you to still continue with your day-to-day life, your day-to-day work as well, and that does not bring you away from or distract you away from your regular daily activities. Again, it's offered via Zoom virtual classroom, where you're able to go one-on-one with the trainer and follow through as the trainer takes us through the different modules to study. With that, I think we come into our Q&A session, and we do have a number of questions. So Vincent, I'll read off the questions for you, and then you can answer. And I'll start with Tylo. So Tylo says, what is the most ideal pathway for disposal of sanitary towels, especially in rural areas, that is for schools, where sanitation wash facilities are a challenge? Can it be recommended that mini incinerators do the job? Vincent, over to you.
Should I take one or several questions? Maybe you can take like batches of 3.
Okay then. So that is the question from Tello. And then I'll read a question from Konate. So you can answer those 2 first. So Konate also asks, to what extent can menstruations affect girls' education? So those 2 are linked in terms of they both touch on schools. One talks about more of requesting clarification on disposal of sanitation, sanitary towels. And the other one talks of to what extent can menstruation affect girls' education? And the other one, just to read it again, what is the most ideal pathway for disposal of sanitary towels, especially in rural areas? This is in schools where sanitation wash facilities are a challenge. Can it be recommended that mini incinerators do the job?
Thank you. Diana, I can quickly take those 2. From to what extent can menstruation affect girls' education? Studies have shown that it does, especially in areas where access is not possible. In the sense that we talked about menstruation takes 2 to 7 days, depending maybe on the age of the menstruator or something like that. And therefore it means in areas, and this is what we call the SAC, the school going children, or the school going age, when they anytime from 9 years all the way to, from 9 years, that's when menstruation normally starts. So it means that if a girl does not have access to menstrual products, does not have access to safe facilities for changing and for washing and for just going around the process with dignity, they will avoid school and they will stay home during the 2 to 7 days or 5 days thereabouts. While they are staying at home because of menstruation, others will continue learning. So that means they will lose in terms of their academics, while their counterparts will be in school. And this is bound to repeat. Every month you lose around 5 days or so because of that. So that means that an intervention has to be put in place so that the sanitary pads are made available within the schools. There's need to have the wash facilities. There's need to have water and sanitation services. There's need to have soap. There's need to have a private room for girls to change so that they can continue with education normally. Otherwise, there's also need for just awareness, education to the girls so they understand it is normal and it should not stop them from going on with the education. Some of them think that is a sickness, therefore they have to stay home and hide. So it can affect them in that way. And as programmers, we need to take that challenge and be able to support them. The most ideal pathway for disposal, especially in schools in the rural areas, yes, there's one that people use mainly, and these are the pit latrines. Girls are encouraged to throw the sanitary pads within the pit latrines. It depends on the circumstances. That is usually allowed. The only challenge is that a pad will take 100 years before it rots, it disintegrates within the environment. So that means the more you put into the pit latrines, then they fill up, and it means you have to dig another one quite often. So it is recommended that that can be used, but the least of the methods that you can use on the chain. You can have what you call the sanitary bins within the toilets or in schools that are collected by rental services. So you have these buckets that are placed in specific areas, maybe the toilets, the wash areas, and all that. The girls are encouraged to put the pads in there. Then this can be collected for disposal. On the high end, you can have incinerators. The low end incinerators and the high end incinerators within schools, so that when all these pads or used products are collected, they can be incinerated. This, you have to take care of the environment, because obviously there is the pollution of the environment and all that. So it means that you need to go for the best quality that will minimize as much as possible. And that for a school sometimes could be expensive, but also we have to deal with what we have given the resources. So ideally, toilets can work, sanitary bins within spaces in schools, and having incineration. But if you can have this removed from school and taken to incineration plant, I think that would be the best way to manage. But it comes at a cost, and that has to be considered. Yeah, so that are my thoughts around those two. Do let me know if there are other questions, Diana.
Yes, thank you for answering that quite extensively. So the next two questions, one comes from Goki and the other one is from an anonymous attendee. So the one from Goki reads, 40, this is just seeking clarification. So does the 40 menstruation years include the years when they are young? This is the girls. And he just needs to understand a bit better on this in terms of the menstruation period. You did mention 40 years during the presentation. And then the other question is some women with implants, this is contraceptives, don't undergo menstruation. Is there a health challenge with regards to that? Those are the two questions. Over to you, Vincent.
Thank you very much. 40 years. Menstruation starts at around 9 years. That's normal for girls. Although in some areas, especially in the rural setting, we expect that to start at around 12, 13. There are some who will not have it until maybe 15, thereabouts. And then it's expected to go all the way to 40, 45, and in some instances up to 50. So if you look at that, it gives you around 40 years of your life you're menstruating. So that's how that figure comes around. Just to understand the biology of how that happens and the period in which that happens, which is normal. It gives you around 40 years. So the issue to do with the implants, implants have a lot of hormones. They are hormonal in nature, and therefore they tamper with your normal biology. So sometimes you have maybe delayed menstruation, or heavy, or early, or sometimes delayed length, as I said. And this can be a challenge. But if it happens that you are within the reproductive age and you're using implants and there's no menstruation, that is a health risk. And it means that the method you're using probably is not the best for you. It's advisable that women have to speak with the healthcare provider to understand which is the best method for you. It's not, sometimes implants are not best for every woman. Or maybe if you're using pills, or maybe you're using the coils and all that, every woman is different. And therefore, I think it's important to take care of your health and to speak to your healthcare provider to understand, then ask your patterns, and therefore you'll understand which will be the best method for you that will not harm you. But once the menstruation stops, it's the high time you visit your facility, because right there is a health challenge and it could become very, very problematic. Thank you for that. Diana, are there any other questions?
Thank you so much for answering the two questions. At this point, I welcome participants who may have a question to raise their hand kindly in the next 2 minutes, because I see we are short of time. Participants who may have a question, would like to ask their question, you can raise your hand. We will allow you to unmute. Okay, I believe silence means we are all together. We've all been able to understand our expert for the day, Vincent, who's talked about leveraging on WASH for menstrual hygiene management. We have been able to share with you the links to the courses, the WASH courses. We encourage you to explore those pages, the links that we've been able to share. And in case if you have any question in regards to any of the questions, you can always reach out to us. Our lines are always open. Our email addresses, we are able to respond to you, even our WhatsApp. For those of us who've been able to share their contacts, thank you so much for doing so. At this point, I want to start off closing this webinar by saying thank you to all the participants, all the attendees, especially those of us who were quite engaging in the chat section and in the Q&A section, who had a number of questions for us. Thank you so much for that. I would like to say special thank you to Vincent, who was able to swiftly take us through leveraging on WASH for menstrual hygiene management. And he does take up the menstrual hygiene management course. I would like to say thank you to the entire Humanitarian Global team for having facilitated this session. And we will be sharing with you the recording as well as the slides that were shared by Vincent via the email address that you did register with for the webinar, as well as via our Humanitarian Global Wave Community Forum on Discord. We'll be able to share the links for you to access the materials as well. At this point, I'd like to say thank you so much. And until next time, remember on Tuesday, the 12th, we have a webinar on SPSS the same time. So hopefully I'll be able to see you there. Until then, goodbye.
My name is Adam Mohammed. I am a humanitarian person and a farmer at the same time. I am also a Nigerian. My journey as a humanitarian started sometimes around 2016 in the NYSC camp. You know, when you finish your degree program, you need to go for a year training. So in Nigeria, we call it NYSC, National Youth Service Corps. So while at the camp, I have this staff of CUSO International. CUSO International actually is a Canadian humanitarian organization that is working towards ensuring no poverty and no equality among the community in all. So they approached the serving corps members at the camp, telling them to come and volunteer with the organization in providing services in certain communities that they will be posted to. At first, I wasn't interested because I am a farmer. Then I realized that there are several areas where I can render my service to. I can also render my service to youths, encouraging them to have a sustainable means of livelihood in agriculture.